Once again, gentlemen, your whole investigation is going nowhere. Keep me here for all eternity, imprison me, execute me if you must, sacrifice to the non-existent deity you call justice, but you will hear nothing new from me. I have told you everything that I remember, and I have told you as I know it, without distorting or concealing a single fact, and if anything remains unclear to you, it is because of the haze that obscured my mind, and the elusive, incomprehensible nature of the horrors that have brought this haze upon me. I repeat, I do not know what happened to Harley Warren, though I think, at least I hope, that he is in a tranquil oblivion if, indeed, such bliss is available to mortals. Yes, for 5 years I have been Harley's closest friend and faithful companion in his daring explorations of the unknown. Nor would I deny that the man you describe as a witness may well have seen the two of us on that dreadful night at 12:30, at Gainesville Peak, whence he said we were headed for the Great Cypress Swamp. I myself, however, have little recollection of these details. That we had with us electric flashlights, spades, and a roll of wire connecting some apparatus, I am prepared to affirm even under oath, for all these articles played a considerable part in that absurd and monstrous story, the details of which are deeply impressed upon my memory, however faint and unreliable. As to what happened afterwards and why I was found the next morning alone and insane at the edge of the swamp, I swear I know nothing more than what I am tired of telling you. You say there is no place in or around the swamp where the nightmarish episode described so many times could have taken place. But I have only recounted what I saw with my own eyes, and I have nothing to add. Whether it was a vision or a delusion, oh, how I wish it had been. I don't know, but that's all I remember of those terrible hours when we were out of people's sight. And the question of why Harley Warren did not return can only be answered by him, or by his shadow, or by the nameless entity I cannot describe. Again, not only did I know the kind of research Harley Warren was engaged in, but I participated in some way in it. Of his vast collection of old rare books on forbidden subjects, I have read all those written in languages I know, but these were very few compared to the folios, which were littered with signs I did not know at all. Most, as far as I could tell, were Arabic, but the sepulchral book that led us to the monstrous denouement, the one he carried with him in his pocket, was written in hieroglyphics the like of which I had never seen anywhere before. Warren would never agree to tell me what the book was about. As for the nature of our studies, I can only repeat that today I can no longer quite imagine it. To tell you the truth, I was glad I had forgotten, because it was an awful thing to do. I was more enthusiastic about it than genuinely interested in it. Warren always seemed to overwhelm me, and at times I was even afraid of him. I remember feeling uncomfortable with the look on his face on the eve of the terrible accident. He had been telling me with passion why some corpses do not decompose, but lie in their graves for thousands of years, unaffected by decay. But today I am no longer afraid of him. Perhaps he has faced such horrors beside which my fear is nothing. Today I no longer fear for myself, but for him. Once again, I don't have a clear enough idea of our intentions that night. What is certain is that they were most closely connected with the book Warren brought with him, the very ancient book, written in an incomprehensible alphabet, that had arrived in the mail from India a month before. But I swear I don't know exactly what we were supposed to find. A witness testified that he saw us at 12:30 on Gainesville Peak, from where we were making our way toward the Big Cypress Mire. That may have been the case, but I had a faint recollection of it. The picture that sticks in my mind and scorched my soul consists of only one scene. It must have been well past midnight, for the flawed sickle of the moon stood high in the mist-shrouded skies. The scene was an old cemetery, so old that I shuddered as I looked at the manifold signs of deep antiquity. It was in a deep, damp hollow, overgrown with moss, weeds, and freakishly crisscrossing grasses. The unpleasant smell that filled the ravine was absurdly associated in my idle imagination with rotting stone. The decrepitude and squalor surrounded us on all sides, and I never for a moment thought that Warren and I were the first living creatures to break the centuries-old silence of the grave. The wretched moon over the edge of the hollow peered dimly through the unhealthy fumes that seemed to flow from some invisible catacomb, and in its faint, distorted light I could see the sinister outlines of ancient slabs, urns, cenotaphs, vaulted entrances to vaults, crumbling, mossy, blackened by time and half concealed by a lush profusion of malignant vegetation. My first impression of this monstrous necropolis was when Warren and I stopped in front of some dilapidated tomb and dumped what appeared to be our luggage on the ground. I remember that I had 2 shovels and an electric lantern, and my companion had the same lantern and a portable telephone set. Not a word was spoken between us, for both the place and our purpose were as if we knew them. Without wasting time, we took up our shovels and began to clear the grass, weeds, and clinging soil from the ancient flat tomb. When we had cleared the roof of the tomb, which was composed of 3 heavy slabs of granite, we stepped back to view the scene from afar. Warren seemed to be making some calculations in his mind. On returning to the grave, he took the shovel, and using it as a lever, attempted to raise the nearest slab to the heap, which had formerly been a monument. He was unsuccessful, and with a gesture called me for help. With our combined efforts we succeeded in loosening the slab, lifting it up and placing it on its side. In the place of the distant slab there was a black hole, from which a cluster of such nauseating miasmas burst forth that we recoiled in horror. When we approached the pit again some time later, the fumes were less saturated. Our lanterns illuminated the upper part of the stone staircase, oozing with some malignant suds of the subterranean depths. It was bounded on its sides by damp walls with a patina of saltpeter. It was at that moment that the first words that survived in my memory rang out. Warren broke the silence, and his sweet, velvet tenor was, in spite of the nightmare, as calm as ever. "I'm sorry," he said, "but I must ask you to stay upstairs. I would be committing a crime if I let a man with such weak nerves as you have go down there. You have no idea, in spite of all you have read and heard from me, what it is that I am destined to see and accomplish. It's a frightening mission, Carter, and it takes nerves of steel to return to the world alive and in my right mind after all I've seen below. I don't want to hurt you, and God knows I'm glad you're with me. But the whole responsibility for this enterprise, in a sense, lies with me, and I don't think I have the right to drag a lump of nerves like you to the threshold of possible death or insanity. You can't even imagine what awaits me there. But I promise to keep you informed by telephone of my every move. As you see, I have enough wire to reach the center of the earth and back." These words, spoken in a nonchalant tone, are still ringing in my ears, and I remember well how I tried to exhort him. I desperately begged him to take me with him to the afterlife, but he was relentless. He even threatened that he would give up his plan if I continued to insist. The threat worked, for he was the only one who had the key to the mystery. That I remember well enough, but what was the object of our inquiry, I cannot now say. With great difficulty in getting me to agree to obey him in everything, Warren picked up a coil of wire from the ground and set up the apparatus. I took one of them and sat down on an old, moldy stone near the entrance to the tomb. Warren shook my hand, slung the coil of wire on my shoulder, and disappeared into the depths of the gloomy crypt. For a minute I could see the glow of his lantern and hear the rustling of the wire coming off the coil, but then the light was suddenly gone, as if the stairs had taken a sharp turn, and almost immediately the sound died away. I was alone, but I had a connection to the unknown abysses through a magical wire, the winding of which gleamed greenish in the faint light of the moon's sickle. I flashed my flashlight on the clock face and pressed my ear to the telephone receiver with feverish anxiety, but for a quarter of an hour there was not a peep in my ear. Then I heard a faint crackle in the receiver. In an agitated voice I shouted the name of my friend into the receiver. In spite of all my forebodings, I was in no way prepared to hear the words that came to me from the depths of the damned crypt, spoken in such an excited, trembling voice that I did not immediately recognize it as my friend Harley Warren. He had seemed so calm and impassive a short time before, and now he was speaking in a whisper that sounded scarier than the most heart-rending wail. God, if you could only see what I see. At that moment, my tongue was gone, and all I had to do was listen silently to the voice on the other end of the phone. And then I heard the frantic cries. Carter, this is terrible. It's horrible. It's unimaginable. This time my voice did not change, and I burst into a torrent of anxious questions. Out of sheer terror, I said over and over again, Warren, what's wrong? Tell me what's going on. Again I heard my friend's voice, a voice distorted by fear, with a distinct hint of despair in it. I can't tell you anything, Carter. It's beyond reason. I just can't tell you anything, do you hear? Whoever knows about this is dead. Good God. I was expecting anything but that. There was silence again, except for an incoherent stream of questions from me. Then Warren's voice came again, this time at the height of frantic terror. Carter, for God's sake, I'm begging you, put the stove back and get out of here before it's too late. Hurry up. Drop everything and get out of here, it's your only chance of salvation. Do as I say, and don't ask for anything. I heard all this and yet I kept asking questions like a frenzied man. All around me were tombs, darkness, and shadows. Below me was a horror beyond the imagination of mortal man. But my friend was in even greater danger than I was, and despite my fright, I was even offended that he thought I was capable of leaving him under such circumstances. A few more clicks, and after a short pause Warren's desperate cry, get up. For God's sake, put the stove back in place and get out of here, Carter. That my companion had stooped to vulgar language indicated an extreme degree of shock, and it was the last straw that broke my patience. With a lightning-fast decision, I shouted, Warren, hold on. I'm coming down to you. But to these words my caller responded with a cry that was now full of despair. Don't you dare. Don't you understand? It's too late. It's all my fault, I'm responsible. Get off the stove and run, nobody can help me. Warren's tone changed again. His tone softened, with a hint of bitterness and hopelessness, but at the same time there was a clear and intense note of anxiety about my fate. Hurry up, or it will be too late. I tried not to pay too much attention to his exhortations, trying to shake off my consternation and keep my promise to come to his aid. But when he spoke again, I was still sitting motionless, in the grip of a chilling terror. Carter, hurry. Don't waste time. This is pointless. You have to go. Better me alone than both of us. The stove. A pause, clicks, followed by Warren's faint voice. It's almost over. Don't prolong my agony. And you're wasting your time. You're wasting your time. Goodbye. Carter. Goodbye forever. Then Warren shifted sharply from whispering to screaming, ending with a shriek of millennial terror. Damn them, the hellbenders. There are more of them here than I can count. My God. Run. 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 Then there was silence. God knows how many endless centuries I sat there, paralyzed, whispering, muttering, mumbling, calling out, screaming, and yelling into the phone. Ages past centuries, and I sat there whispering, muttering, calling, shouting, and screaming, Warren. Warren. Can you hear me? Where are you? And then came the horror that was the apotheosis of all that had happened, the horror unthinkable, unimaginable, almost impossible. I have already mentioned that it seemed an eternity since Warren had shouted his last desperate warning, and that now it was only my screams that broke the silence. After a while, however, the receiver clicked again, and I was all ears. "Warren, are you there?" I called out to him again, and in response I heard something that brought a gloomy darkness to my mind. I do not even try to give an account of what it was, I mean the voice, gentlemen, and I dare not describe it in detail, for the first words it uttered made me lose my senses and led to a lapse in consciousness that lasted until I woke up in the hospital. Needless to say, the voice was low, stringy, muffled, distant, mournful, inhuman, disembodied. Anyway, I can't say any more than that. That is the end of my fractured memories, and with them of my story. I heard that voice and fell into unconsciousness. In an unknown cemetery, in a deep, damp hollow, surrounded by crumbling slabs and crumbling tombstones, amidst lush overgrowth and noxious fumes, I sat stiffly watching the dancing of shapeless, greedy shadows under the pale, flawed moon, when from the deepest depths of the gaping crypt the voice came to me. And this is what it said: "Fool. Warren is dead."